Okay, thank you and welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. My name is Jason Slone, but my full name's Donald Jason Slone. So D. Jason Slone. I tell you that because at the end I'll give you my email address. If you have questions, you want to reach out to me. My email is actually D Slone. Even though I go by Jason, that's my mom's fault. I blame her for calling me by my middle name. So this presentation is called Course Design on the Fly: How to Design a Role-Playing Game in 1 hour or less. And so hopefully what you'll get out of this is a little intro to role-playing games in general and how to use them in class effectively. And then also part two is how to design a role-playing game if you would like to design one for your class, and how to do so efficiently. And honestly, you'll be able to create a short game in an hour or less once you understand the template. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the background is my wife is a professor. We teach at the same university. She's actually in the Department of English. I'm in the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies. Well, one night she got sick, and she had class the next day, and she reached out to colleagues to try to get some course coverage, and she couldn't find anyone. And so she looked at me, she said, "I'm sick. I can't find coverage. What am I going to do?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll cover your class for you. What are they studying?" And she said, "Well, we're doing rhetorical strategies, logos, pathos, and ethos." And I said, "Well, I know kind of what those are, but I'm not sure I can teach that." And so we looked at each other and like said, and we sort of light bulb went off. We said, "Let's write a game and let the students teach themselves." So one of the things you'll see about the value of role-playing games, it's a way for students to actually take ownership of their learning. And so, some background on writing a game. I have written a full game. If you're interested, I'll talk a little bit more at the end of the presentation, but the game is called Two Nations, One Land. It's actually on the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, and that's the game there. I'm happy to share that if anybody is interested. And so I'd written a full game, so I had some experience with game design, and my wife also has been active in the role-playing game, pedagogy game community. And so we do have some background in this. And so that's kind of what I'm going to share with you today is if you want, once you sort of know how role-playing games work, again, you can design one pretty efficiently. So that's the background. We had a very short notice. It was like, oh my gosh, we got to do this. We got to write a game tonight for the class starting at tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So we didn't have a lot of time. And so that's what we had to do. So a little bit of background on role-playing games in general. There are a bunch of different kinds, but I'm very active in one particular role-playing game pedagogy, and that is called Reacting to the Past. It actually was originally created by Mark Barnes at Barnard College, and he's a historian, so he was using role-playing games to teach history. But since then, it's grown all over the U.S. and actually all over the world into many different disciplines with all kinds of role-playing games, not just to teach history, but to teach contemporary stuff. And so if you're interested in learning more about reacting to the past, Reacting Consortium is the place to go for that. And just a quick overview of right now, there's a whole bunch of published games, and these are games that have been played and vetted, and you can purchase the games, and they come with a game book for the students, but then also a bunch of instructional materials that you will need as an instructor. And they're all different kinds of disciplines, as you can see. There's one on art, there's one on political science and philosophy, the Reformation, history of science, and so forth, climate change, apartheid in South Africa, Confucianism, China. So there's all kinds of different games. And let me see if I can go back here. Always hate doing this. Let me close. Sorry, apologize. I'm trying to get back to. It's one thing I hate about the. Oh my goodness. I apologize, folks. I'm trying to get back to these slides that I had here. Let's see if I can do that now. Well, oh my goodness. I apologize for this, folks. I'm trying to figure out, anybody in the chat know how to get back to the slides?
Jason, can you see your tab that says course design?
There we go.
Second tab?
If I go, for whatever reason, that the bar up there keeps coming down. If I go back there. There we go. All right. Apologies, everybody. Technology is great when it works. Okay, so I just want to give you some background on reacting to the past, because there's a bunch of published games, and a lot of these games last about 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks in a classroom. So these are considered to be full games. So a lot of reacting to the past instructors decided, have been saying, hey, I don't want to play a game. I don't want to take a whole month of my class to play a game. And so people started writing shorter games. And there are about 10 published short games, about 10 published short games. And a short game is usually about a week or two at the most, maybe 3 or 4, 5 at the most class sessions. And then other faculty members are saying, hey, I don't want to even spend an entire week or two. I want a game I can do in just one single class session. And so people started writing what are now called micro games, and that's one class with no prep required. And so there's about 10 of those that are published. But the thing is, depending on what class you're teaching, there might not be a published game on your discipline or your topic, your course, or whatever. So people started figuring out, hey, we need to, create a design template so we can create our own games in the past. And so the Reacting community came up with a basic game design template, and it looks like this. And this is the template you would use to design your own game. So you take some kind of issue or topic in your discipline or in your course. And typically there are 4 roles in the role-playing game. There's the GM, the game moderator, and that can be an actual character or a role in the game. But that's typically one person, and they typically just moderate the game. When somebody raises their hand to speak, they call on them, that kind of thing. So they're the game moderator, and you can play that role, or you can have a student play that role. And then typically there are 3 teams. A team that's for one side of the issue, a team that's against that side of the issue, and then importantly, the third team is the group of undecideds. And so typically you'll have an issue. It could be a controversial issue. Is Pluto a planet or not? Something like that. You'd have 1/3 of your students would be on, yes, Pluto is a planet. You'd have 1/3 of the students, no, Pluto is not a planet. And you'd have 1/3 of the students that are not sure. And then the goal of the game is for the for and the against teams to convince the undecideds to vote one way or the other. And so typically at the end of the game moderator will take a vote. And of course, all the fors will vote for and all the against will vote against. So however many undecideds vote for or against, that team is going to win. So that's a typical game design. And so if you play in a game in a 50-minute class, it breaks down like this. You typically, you take about a couple of minutes, 5 minutes at the most, to set the scene, so to speak, and talk about the issue. Give the students maybe 10 minutes to get in their teams and do some research. So we encourage students, bring your laptops, bring your phones, because you're going to be looking up stuff on the fly. This is assumed they've done no prep at all. If they have done some prep, you can actually, minimize this or reduce this amount of time because they were already prepped. But if they haven't done any prep, that's okay. They can do some quick prep. And then each team will give an opening argument. I usually don't require the undecided team to make an argument, just the for and the against, but you can have the undecideds if you want. At most, this is 3 minutes, or excuse me, 5 minutes. Sometimes I'll say you have 1 minute and that's it, because I'm trying to maximize the debate time. So the rest of the class is the debate. Okay, so it's typically set the issue, let the students do some research prep and get prepared. One person from each team makes an opening argument, and then the floor is open for debate. And then I always emphasize, of course, the for and the against have very clear purpose and audience. They're trying to persuade the undecideds to vote for them. The role of the undecided is to play like a Supreme Court judge in a way, like you're going to ask clarifying questions, push back, and so forth. And so that's how they participate. And then at the very end of the game, you vote. Typical approach is either the GM will vote, and I've done it that way, where I will keep track on a little scratch pad who makes the best arguments, or I'll let the undecideds vote, and more democratic kind of approach. And then one optional end of the gameplay is take a couple of minutes to debrief if you would like, what happened, what were the strong arguments, et cetera. And it could be a debrief about the content, the subject matter, or it could be a debrief about the students' participation, rhetorical strategies, and so forth. Some professors don't do this. They'll do the debrief at the beginning of the next class. So there's another option as well. So very simple game materials. If you're trying to design a game in 1 hour or less, you basically just need 1 page. And the 1 page will have a brief paragraph at the top on the issue, the setting. Is Pluto a planet? Some say yes, some say no. That's the setting. And then the 3 teams, team yes, team no, team undecided. And sometimes in the game materials, we put in, give the students like a sample argument. So it kind of gets them going and they kind of understand what they're supposed to be doing. So a sample argument say, yes, Pluto is a planet because historically planets have been defined as X. Pluto meets all those criteria, therefore yes. Okay. And then typically the game materials will have the basic rules that the students have to follow in the game. I'm going to go over those here quickly in a sec. And then how the students are going to get graded. That's, they care about that, of course. And so you can get all this on one page, print off 3 or 4 copies for class and hand each team one page. Typical game rules. Importantly, no ad hominem attacks. And talk about, you have a brief conversation about civility and respect, viewpoint diversity, not attacking people. So in philosophy, the ad hominem attack is attacking a person, not the idea. Give them an example maybe to help, like, don't say you're an idiot. You say that argument is problematic because blah, blah, blah. There is what we call the podium rule. If the debate gets crazy, and it will, you can have a podium rule where if a student feels like they're not being heard or they don't have a chance to speak, they can walk up to the podium. And if somebody goes to the podium, all debate stops and you have to listen to the person. That way you don't get, the most assertive and aggressive debaters in the class dominating the conversation and other people not having a chance to talk. And then typically, most votes wins is the game rule. And importantly, you will tell students what you're doing in these role-playing games is playing the role, the character you're assigned. Don't play yourself. So you might have a personal belief about this, but please bracket that off for the purpose of role-playing and the game, and you're playing the character. So the purpose here is for them to make arguments, not to support their own beliefs necessarily. Okay, and typical grade games, I try to keep it simple, like you're going to get graded on your effectiveness of your participation. If you give an opinion, like I agree, okay, you get a point for that. But if you give an argument, philosophical argument with some reasoning behind it, like, I agree because it's not fair, blah, 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 that's a little bit better. So you get 2 points. And for me, the best arguments have evidence. That's, you get the most points. I agree because if it's a student loan game, which is one we wrote, something like the average grad has $7,000 in debt. So you're providing evidence. So you can come up with your own grading rubric there. That's the one I use. So the game that we designed for my wife's class was called Student Loans, Cash or Trash, because they had just read an article about how student loans are terrible. And so the game we set was it was in the University System of Georgia, where we teach. The chancellor has decided that he hates student loans because of the student loan debt crisis. So he's going to eliminate all loans. Nobody can get any loans anymore. And instead, every student going to college is going to get a 20-hour-a-week work-study job to pay for college. And the net benefits of this would be that students will graduate with no debt. University operating budgets will reduce because they'll fire all the staff members and students will do all the work on campus. And it promotes equity that way because everybody's going to get a 20-hour job. And so even the rich kids will have to work, kind of thing. So this was the silly sort of fictitious game we created. And so you had and so the chancellor is going to give a town hall, and you had team, yes, this is a great idea. We hate loans. We want a job instead. You have a team that's against it. No, this is a terrible idea. We don't want jobs. And then you had a group that was undecided in the middle. So we let them make arguments and debate. And at the end, the U.S. Chancellor, who I played that role as the GM, I played the role of chancellor. I asked for a vote, and the undecideds in this particular class voted against. They thought it was a terrible idea, and so the chancellor decided not to do it. So that's basically how a very simple micro game is designed and played. There are a bunch of other existing games that are out there, so I'll talk to you a little bit about those. But you can see even full games and short games have basically the same design template. Okay, so again, once you know the basic design and the template, it's very easy to write a game. So here's a game that I've played. It's a full game. It lasts about 6 weeks long. There's about a week of prep and about a week of debrief and 4 weeks of gameplay. So in a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, that's going to be 8 class sessions. You can maybe get it down to 6 or whatever you can, and change a little bit or other. But again, it doesn't matter the length of the game or the complexity. They all basically have the same design template. You have 3 teams, for and against, and an undecided. So this game is called Augsburg 1530, and it's really a game about the Protestant Reformation. So my field is, I'm in philosophy of religion, world religions, comparative religions. It goes by a variety of names. So I tend to teach intro to religion a lot, okay? And so I use full game, reacting to the past games in those intro classes. And that's another thing to say, is these role-playing games are not just for advanced upper-level students, they're majors, honors classes, those kinds of things. These work great at all levels and with all students. So most of the students who take my intro classes, they're not majors, they're not specialists. They're just doing this just for gen ed. And actually, in some ways, I think I would argue it's even better for students like that, because they come into the class kind of not expecting it to be a good experience, and then all of a sudden they get caught up in the excitement of the game and they have a lot, and it sort of tricks them into some deep learning about the particular topic. So this particular game is a fun game. It's set in the city of Augsburg in the year 1530, as the Protestant Reformation is heating up in Europe. In this town of Augsburg, the city council comes together and they have to make a big decision. Basically, which Christian group are they going to affiliate with? They're currently Catholic, but there's a lot of agitation in town to switch to the hot new Christian group, the Lutherans, or the other hot new Christian group, Reform group following Zwingli. And so you basically have three groups in this particular game. You have the people who are currently Catholic on the city council, but aren't sure if they want to stay Catholic, the town meeting. And then you have a group of students who are Lutherans, and you have a group who are followers of Zwingli. And you can actually set it up to have a fourth group of people who are not attending church currently at all. And so they're trying to figure out if they would, what would they choose, and so forth. And so basically the Lutherans and the Zwinglis have to try to persuade the undecided Catholics on the city council to adopt one of the new Christian traditions for the town. And so again, same design. It's a more complex game, and there are lots of other issues involved, but it's basically the same design template. There's a for and against and an undecided. The game that I wrote several years ago. It's obviously a very complex, difficult issue right now. I wrote this before that all happened, but this is a game on the origins of the Israeli-Arab conflict, and it's called Two Nations, One Land. It actually is an open source game. You can use this game if you're interested in playing it. Please reach out to me to get some help and clarification, because it's such a hot issue right now. So I would ask you, just if you're interested in using this game, please reach out, and again, let's have a conversation about it, because there's some complexities there that you want to be aware of. But basically, same design, basically the same design. So I don't know if you know the history of the conflict, but at the end of World War II, the United Nations takes up the quote unquote problem of Palestine, which is that you have Zionists who have escaped anti-Semitism and the Holocaust in Europe, and escaped and gone back to recreate the state of Israel, which the Zionists believe was rightly theirs, 2,000 years ago, before they were exiled by the Romans. And of course, you have the Arabs of Palestine who are living there currently and feel, of course, that this is a land grab. And so there's fighting going on between Zionists and Palestinians. And so the British, who had a mandate for Palestine after World War I, hand this over to the UN to solve, and the UN creates a special committee to investigate and make recommendations to the UN General Assembly. And so that's called the UNSCOP, the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine. And so the UNSCOP in this game is the undecideds. And so that actually is sort of true to historical reality. The Special Committee on Palestine did not include any members of the great powers who obviously had biases about the situation. So the U.S. was not on it, was not represented. Britain was not represented. Russia was not represented, et cetera. And so the UNSCOP is supposed to be fair and neutral, and so they're the undecided. So you got the Zionists, you got the Arabs of Palestine, and you got the UNSCOP. Again, same course design. Another game I've played that's published is Trial of Galileo. If you know the basic history of Galileo, it's the same design template. And so Galileo publishes some tracts, some texts, and some results of experiments he had done, which suggest that the Catholic Church's position on cosmology is actually inaccurate, which raises all kinds of theological implications. What do you mean? How can the Pope be wrong? How can the Bible be wrong if the Bible is wrong? Oh my gosh, what does that do for the whole church? And so what do you do with this new controversial publication? And what do you do with Galileo? Do you ban the book? Do you ban his books? And do you punish him in any kind of way? And so he's brought to trial. And of course, you got three teams. Again, same game design. The conservatives in this particular game want to preserve Catholic tradition and the position of biblical inerrancy. And so they want to punish Galileo and ban his books. However, you have progressives in the game who say, no, 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 we should never censor. We should promote science, and and we'll deal with the implications of Catholic reform as needed, and so forth. And so the progressives don't want the book to be banned, books to be banned. They don't want Galileo to be punished in any kind of way. So the conservatives are for punishing and banning. The progressives are against. And then you have a number of the people who are undecided. They're not sure what to do about Galileo and his books. And so same course design there. And so that again, so hopefully that will give you a sense of the basic design template. And once you know the basic design template, the materials, the rules of the game, and so forth, that you can write a game very efficiently. Now, there are some pros and there are some cons. This is not, this is not a magic. It's not, it is a wonderful pedagogy, in my opinion. I'm biased. I think I love it. It promotes deep learning. It promotes engagement. It makes learning fun for you and for the students. It actually helps with research skills because all of a sudden you'll find students on their phones trying to look up data and facts. And it helps with rhetorical strategies like purpose and audience. It clarifies purpose and audience makes it crystal clear, which is wonderful for a lot of students because they're often not sure what they're trying to be arguing in papers and that kind of thing. Now, some pros and cons of the game. So I just gave you a bunch of the pros. Now the cons. It does take a few minutes to get going, especially if your students have not played any games yet. If they've played a game or two, they get it right away and they're ready to jump right in. But the first game you ever play, it'll take 10 minutes to get going. And in other words, there'll be an opening argument and there'll be a second opening argument. And you're like, okay, let's open up for debate. And the students will go, and they'll start looking at each other awkwardly and uncomfortably. Just let the silence go. Don't intervene. And pretty soon the awkwardness the silence will motivate one student or two to go, well, I disagree with you. And then the next thing you know, within a couple of minutes, once they sort of figure out, oh, now I know what we're doing, then it goes, and then it takes off. Then the second con to this is at the end of the class, they are at full speed. They're full steam, full speed, and they often don't want to stop. Okay. And so it's this weird thing where it takes them a while to get going, but once they get going, they get into it. They sort of forget that they're just playing a game. They sort of get into it. And this has happened many, many, many times. I've been doing role-playing games for 5 years now, and they don't want to stop at class. They'll often turn to you and say, can we keep going for 5 more minutes? And I'm like, no, we can't. We got to get out of the class. They're like, oh, we want to keep going. And sometimes I've even been told by students later, they say, we kept going. We went in the hallway. We're walking across the quad, still arguing with each other. So that's a con. You'll have to shut it off. The third con is, and this is a serious one, honestly, they will get really loud and the classroom next door will get annoyed. I've had a couple of cases where I had to apologize to my colleagues next door because it got so loud. The professor came out of their classroom and over to my classroom and shut the door kind of angrily. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And so I've had conversations with professors next door, like that was too loud, that was interrupted, So just be aware that you might want to keep the door closed, whatever your policy is on that at your school, but it will get loud and you may annoy the faculty members and students in classrooms next to you. And here's a pro and con of this pedagogy is student minds will be on fire. And I'm stealing that phrase from the guy who started all this, Mark Carnes, because his book is called Minds on Fire. And it really isn't, this is what happens. The students who play these role-playing games, they get their minds they're so excited and so engaged. And that's the wonderful part of this. The downside is it makes it tough to go back to a non-role-playing game classroom format. So it's very difficult if you play a game, even for one class session, and then the next class session, you go to lecture or something like that, they will be bored to death. And so this is something to be aware of. If you're going to, try role-playing games, they're absolutely wonderful pedagogical devices, but just be aware this is the saying in the reacting community, it's easier to go from lecture to game than game to lecture. Because if you go to game to lecture, the students will be bored and kind of check out. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So these are some pros and cons. Hopefully this, came through. Again, I'll go back just a quick refresh. You can write a simple one-class role-playing game with no prep on the student's part. Basically 4 roles: a GM, a team for, a team against, and an undecided. You play for you set the scene for about 5 minutes, give them a few minutes to prep, give an opening argument, debate. vote at the end and do some debrief. You just need a page that outlines the setting, the teams, the rules, and the grades. And you're off and running. And so if you're interested in taking a deeper dive, this is a really short presentation. These are two books I recommend. If you want to take a deep dive into reacting in general, read Minds on Fire. It's a wonderful book, easy read. It's kind of narrative style. It's not heavy on statistics and all that kind of stuff. Jargon free, easy to read, good book. And then if you really want to dive into the details of more advanced game design, I think he's the president or whatever of the Reacting Consortium now, Nick Proctor, has written a book called Game Designer's Handbook. And that will give you lots of detail on how to write a book. All right, so I'm going to stop there and open up the chat here and see if I can answer some questions. Okay.
Hi. So we are actually out of time, but you feel free to stay behind with Jason if he's amenable to that to do some.
Yeah, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes here and answer some questions.